The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows against the towering pines. A lone loon called out, its mournful cry echoing across the still surface of the lake. Dusk had settled over the Quebec woods, painting the sky in hues of deep purple and blood orange. I breathed in the crisp evening air, savoring the solitude. This annual trip to my remote cabin was my escape, a chance to reconnect with nature and myself. This year felt different, though. A strange energy hung in the air, a palpable tension that sent shivers down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of unseen eyes peering at me from the impenetrable darkness beyond the firelight. I tried to dismiss it as my imagination, a trick of the fading light on my overactive mind, but deep down a primal fear began to stir. I was adding another log to the fire when I saw it, a flicker of light through the trees at the edge of the woods. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but definitely there. My pulse quickened. I was miles from civilization. The nearest town, a 2-hour drive on a dirt road. I wouldn't dare navigate in the dark. Who else could be out here? Curiosity warred with trepidation. Part of me wanted to ignore it, write it off as fireflies or a reflection, but the logical part of my brain, the investigator in me, couldn't let it go. I grabbed my flashlight, the beam cutting a shaky path through the darkness, and cautiously made my way towards the tree line. The forest floor was a treacherous maze of gnarled roots and fallen branches, invisible in the inky blackness. Each step was tentative, my senses on high alert. The further I ventured into the woods, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The air grew heavy, thick with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves. The silence was almost absolute, broken only by the sound of my own breathing and the frantic pounding of my heart. I felt a prickling sensation on the back of my neck, the unsettling feeling of being watched intensifying with every step. The hair on my arms stood on end. I was no stranger to these woods, but tonight they felt alien, hostile. Then I heard it, a faint sound, barely audible above the rustling leaves carried on the breeze. It was a child's voice, high-pitched and thin, whispering something unintelligible. I froze, straining to hear, my blood turning to ice in my veins. The voice seemed to be coming from just ahead, but as I shone my flashlight in that direction, there was nothing but trees. The whispering continued, growing louder now, more insistent. It seemed to be coming from everywhere and nowhere at once, swirling around me in the darkness. I spun around, my heart pounding in my chest, desperate to locate the source of the sound. But there was nothing, no one, just the endless, oppressive darkness and the chilling whispers on the wind. Section 5. Unfamiliar territory. I had been coming to these woods for years, ever since I was a boy. I knew every trail, every bend in the river, and every clearing. I had never once encountered another soul out here, not in all this time. So, the presence of another person, let alone a child, in this remote location was deeply unsettling. The rational part of me tried to explain it away. Maybe it was an animal, its cries distorted by the wind. Maybe it was a trick of the light and sound playing on my already heightened senses, but deep down I knew something was wrong. This was something different, something unexplainable. Section 6. The forest holds its breath. The whispering reached a fever pitch, then abruptly stopped. The silence that followed was deafening, heavier than before, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, my flashlight beam dancing nervously across the trees, my ears straining for any sound. The feeling of dread intensified, wrapping around me like a shroud. I was no longer the hunter in this strange game, but the hunted. My instincts screamed at me to run, to get back to the safety of the cabin. But my feet felt rooted to the spot, paralyzed by fear and a strange, morbid curiosity. Section 7. A child lost or worse, the voice began again, closer this time, a whimper now, filled with fear and despair. It was definitely a child, and it sounded lost, scared. A wave of protectiveness washed over me, momentarily overriding my fear. I had to find whoever was out there, help them. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling slightly. "Is someone there? Can you hear me?" The only response was the rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. I took a hesitant step forward, then another, my flashlight beam cutting a path through the darkness. Section 8. Retreating into the unknown. The voice seemed to be leading me deeper into the woods, away from the lake and the relative safety of my cabin. I hesitated, my gut screaming at me to turn back, but the thought of a child lost and alone in the darkness spurred me on. As I pushed through a thicket of branches, I caught a fleeting glimpse of something moving in the distance. It was a shadowy figure, small and slight, silhouetted against the faint glow of the moon behind the trees. I called out again, my voice a mixture of fear and hope. The figure turned, and for a split second our eyes met. Section 9, an unsettled feeling. The figure turned and melted back into the darkness as quickly as it had appeared. I stood there, heart pounding, unsure of what I had seen. Was it a child or something else? Something more sinister? I didn't know, and I wasn't sure I wanted to find out. I retreated back to the cabin, my senses on high alert. The whispers and the fleeting glimpse of the figure burned into my memory. The next morning, I searched the woods again in the daylight, but found no sign of anyone or anything. The experience left me deeply unsettled, haunted by the unanswered questions and the chilling certainty that I had stumbled onto something both unexplainable and deeply disturbing. To this day, I can't shake the feeling that I am being watched, that the forest and whatever or whoever lurks within its depths is waiting,